We have been conditioned to believe that happiness is something we receive as a reward, something that arrives after all the problems are solved. After the bills are paid, after the challenges have ended, after life finally feels comfortable. But this is an illusion, because life itself is never without challenges. If we wait until everything is perfect before we allow ourselves to be happy, then happiness will remain a distant dream, always just out of reach. The truth is that happiness is not a reward, it is a decision. It is not something to be found later, it is something to be created now. This is where the power lies, because even when life is hard, even when difficulties surround you, you still hold the ability to choose your response. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. The winds are strong, the rain is heavy, and the sky is dark. Many would say, "How can anyone be happy here?" But the real mastery is realizing that the storm does not control your inner world unless you let it. You can still stand in the middle of chaos and choose calmness. You can still see the storm as a reminder of your resilience rather than a reason for your despair. This is the shift that turns ordinary people into extraordinary ones. Happiness does not require the absence of pain, but it does require the presence of awareness. The awareness that no matter what happens around you, there is still something inside you that cannot be touched, something that remains whole, strong, and capable of joy. When you understand this, you realize that happiness is not fragile. It is not something you need to protect from hardship. Instead, it is a force you can cultivate, a strength you can lean on. But this requires effort. It requires pushing yourself to rise above your own excuses, your own doubts, your own fears. Many people will say, "I will be happy when my situation changes." But the people who truly live, who truly shine, are the ones who say, "I will be happy even while my situation is difficult." Because when you practice happiness in hardship, you discover freedom. You are no longer tied to circumstances. You are no longer a prisoner of what life brings. You become the master of your own state of mind, and that mastery is the true source of peace. This is why happiness is not passive. It is not something that happens by chance. It is something you must push yourself to create every single day. Especially when life feels heavy, because that is when happiness matters most. When life feels heavy and challenges pile up, most people instinctively withdraw into negativity. They complain, they lose their energy, and they wait for things to improve before allowing themselves to feel joy again. But here's the truth. Waiting is a trap. If you always wait for happiness to arrive after the storm, then you give your power away to circumstances that you cannot control. This is why pushing yourself toward happiness is so important. It means taking responsibility for how you feel, even when things are not perfect. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a problem: financial struggles, relationship issues, health concerns, or the uncertainty of tomorrow. If you keep focusing on the weight of this backpack, you will feel weaker with every step. But if instead you choose to focus on your strength, on your determination to keep walking despite the load, suddenly the same backpack does not control you anymore. This is the essence of happiness in difficult times. Shifting your focus away from what burdens you and placing it on to what strengthens you. You see, happiness is not the denial of struggle. It is not pretending that everything is fine. It is acknowledging the struggle, but choosing to not let it dominate your heart. Every single day, life gives us countless small reasons to smile. But we often overlook them because we are too busy staring at the problems. Pushing yourself to be happy means deliberately looking for those small reasons. It could be a sunrise after a long night, the sound of laughter from a loved one, or even the simple fact that you are still alive, still breathing, still capable of change. When you train your mind to notice these things, happiness begins to grow even when the outside world has not improved. And here is another important point. Happiness fuels strength. When you cultivate even a little joy during hardship, your energy rises, your creativity awakens, and you begin to see solutions where before you only saw obstacles. But when you allow negativity to take control, your vision narrows, your motivation disappears, and you feel stuck. This is why pushing for happiness is not just a luxury, it is a survival skill. It is the very fuel that will carry you forward. Through the darkest of days, you cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you meet it. And meeting life with happiness, even forced at first, transforms your state of mind. What begins as a conscious effort eventually becomes natural, like a fire that starts with small sparks but soon burns on its own. So do not wait for better days to give yourself permission to smile. Push yourself to create better days by smiling now, by finding joy now, by deciding to be happy now. Because that decision alone can change everything. Happiness is not something you stumble upon by accident. It is something you must cultivate with intention, especially when life is testing you. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that happiness will automatically appear once all problems are solved. Once the perfect moment arrives, or once the struggle is over. But in reality, problems never completely disappear, and life never stops presenting new challenges. If happiness is always postponed until conditions are perfect, you will spend your entire life waiting. The key is to stop linking your inner state to outer circumstances. Instead, you must build happiness as a practice, something you generate from within, regardless of what happens outside. This requires discipline because the mind naturally gravitates toward negativity. It notices danger, threats, and discomfort faster than it sees beauty, opportunity, or joy. This is a survival mechanism built deep into human nature, but if left unchecked, it traps you in a cycle of stress and dissatisfaction. To break free, you must retrain the mind, much like a muscle that grows stronger with consistent use. Begin by observing your thoughts during difficult moments. When something negative happens, notice the inner voice that wants to complain, to dwell, or to blame. Then make a conscious choice to shift your perspective. Ask yourself, what can I still be grateful for? What lesson can I learn? What strength can I grow from this situation? These questions do not erase the challenge, but they reframe it in a way that opens the door to happiness, even while pain is present. Another powerful way to cultivate happiness in hard times is through small, daily rituals. A few minutes of silence each morning to breathe deeply. Reflect on something positive or simply appreciate being alive can set the tone for the entire day. Physical movement, whether exercise, walking, or stretching, also releases energy that clears mental heaviness. Even small acts of kindness, smiling at a stranger, helping someone in need, or speaking kindly to yourself create ripples of happiness that expand far beyond the moment. These are not grand solutions, but consistent practices that transform your state of being. Remember that happiness is less about removing every obstacle and more about how you carry yourself while facing them. There are people with little material wealth who radiate joy, and there are others with abundance who remain miserable. The difference lies not in their circumstances, but in how they choose to interpret and respond to life. When you learn to cultivate happiness intentionally, life's storms may still come, but they no longer drown you. You develop the resilience to walk through them without losing your light. This is the true power of pushing yourself to happiness. You take control of your own energy, your own emotions, and your own spirit. Instead of waiting for the world to decide how you should feel, when life feels heavy and overwhelming, happiness can seem like the most distant thing in the world, almost impossible to reach. Yet, this is exactly the moment when choosing happiness becomes the most powerful act of strength. Too often, people believe that emotions are like the weather changing, without their control, unpredictable, and random. But in reality, While you cannot control every thought or feeling that arises, you can control how you respond to them. This is where discipline of the mind becomes essential. Happiness is not simply about waiting to feel good. It is about deciding to act in ways that generate good feelings, even when everything around you feels difficult. Imagine a fire burning inside you. If you do not feed it, the flame weakens until it disappears. The same is true with happiness. If you do not feed it through conscious actions, gratitude, mindfulness, movement, self-care, and kindness, then the natural weight of life's challenges extinguishes it. You cannot wait passively. You must actively fuel the inner flame. The greatest danger in hard times is falling into victimhood. When challenges arise, it is easy to believe life is unfair, that happiness is not meant for you, or that others are luckier. But this mindset steals your power and leaves you trapped. The truth is that life is never fair to anyone. Everyone faces unique struggles, losses, and difficulties. Yet some rise above, not because they were given better conditions, but because they refuse to let circumstances define their emotional state. When you push yourself to be happy in the midst of difficulty, you reclaim your power from the outside world and place it back in your own hands. That is freedom, knowing that even in pain, you are not powerless to create light. One practical way to do this is to shift focus from what is missing to what is still present. Instead of obsessing over what you lost, concentrate on what remains. Instead of waiting for a perfect future to arrive, embrace what today still offers. Gratitude is not just about saying thank you for blessings. It is about retraining your eyes to see them when the world wants you to see only darkness. Write down 3 things each night that brought you even the smallest sense of peace or joy: a smile, a meal, a moment of silence. Over time, this simple act trains your brain to look for reasons to be happy, even in pain. Pushing yourself to be happy does not mean ignoring suffering or pretending that everything is fine. It means choosing not to let suffering dominate your spirit. It means standing up each day, even with heavy feet, and saying, "I will not let this break me." Happiness then becomes less of a fleeting emotion and more of a resilient practice and anchor that keeps you steady no matter how strong the storm. When life becomes difficult, happiness does not naturally flow, must be cultivated with intention. To push yourself toward happiness, even in those moments, you need to create rituals and habits that anchor you regardless of the chaos surrounding you. Think of your day as a series of choices, each one either feeding your stress or feeding your peace. Most people wake up and immediately allow external noise, the phone, the news, the unfinished tasks, to shape their emotional state. But when you choose to start your morning with a few minutes of deep breathing, meditation, or movement, you are signaling to your mind that you will lead your emotions instead of being led by them. Even something as simple as stretching your body, journaling, or drinking water in silence can shift your mindset toward balance. These are not luxuries. They are tools of survival when life is heavy. Another important habit is cultivating what some call joyful discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood as something restrictive, but in truth, it is a path to freedom. If you train yourself to move your body every day, even for 10 minutes, your energy rises and your stress lowers. If you discipline your thoughts by questioning negativity, asking, "Is this thought helping me or hurting me?" you begin to weaken the grip of despair. If you discipline your environment by keeping it clean, organized, and uplifting, your mind begins to mirror that order. These small actions compound over time and make it easier to choose happiness, even when pain is present. One of the most effective habits is consciously seeking moments of connection. Isolation magnifies sadness, while connection softens it. Talking with a friend, sharing a meal with family, or even offering kindness to a stranger can remind you that happiness is often found not in the grand achievements, but in the small exchanges of human warmth. In difficult seasons, push yourself. To reach out, because the temptation will always be to withdraw and sink. Deeper into loneliness, equally important is creating space for stillness. In a world that glorifies productivity, silence feels like laziness, but in reality, it is medicine for the mind. Even 5 minutes of sitting quietly, focusing on your breath, or watching nature can restore a sense of peace and clarity. Happiness does not always come from doing more. It often comes from pausing, letting your nervous system reset and reconnecting with the present moment. Finally, remember that habits take time to build, and happiness is not a final destination, but a daily practice. Do not judge yourself for struggling, and do not expect to feel joy immediately after beginning these practices. The key is consistency. By repeating these rituals day after day, you are carving new pathways in your mind and body, training yourself to respond with resilience instead of despair. Over time, these practices become part of who you are, and happiness becomes less about circumstances and more about the strength you cultivate within. When life is hard, one of the greatest shifts you can make is to change the way you define happiness itself. Most people see happiness as something that arrives only when problems disappear, when dreams are achieved, or when life looks perfect from the outside. But if happiness is placed only in the future or in external circumstances, it will forever remain fragile, easily shattered by disappointment. To truly push yourself toward happiness, even in pain, you must learn to see happiness not as the absence of difficulty, but as the strength to carry difficulty with grace. This shift in perception transforms your suffering into a teacher and your struggles into fuel for growth. Instead of waiting for the perfect season, you begin to realize that happiness is a choice to embrace life fully, even when storms are raging. The way to cultivate this deeper form of happiness is through acceptance. Acceptance does not mean resignation or giving up, but rather it means facing reality without resistance. Many people double their suffering by fighting against what already is, complaining endlessly, comparing themselves with others, or refusing to acknowledge their pain. True happiness begins when you stop wasting energy on resisting life and instead say, "This is my challenge, and I will meet it with courage." From that place of acceptance, your energy becomes available to focus on solutions, on growth, and on gratitude. Gratitude is the other powerful key that unlocks happiness in difficult times. When life feels heavy, gratitude forces you to search for light. It shifts your attention away from what is broken to what is still working. Even in your darkest days, there are always small blessings, a kind word, a breath of fresh air. The fact that you are still alive and capable of change. By practicing gratitude daily, whether through writing, speaking, or simply pausing to notice, you train your brain to see life differently. This practice does not erase your problems, but it gives you the strength to face them without losing your sense of hope. Another profound realization is that happiness grows when you give it away. In the moments you feel most stuck, serving others can free you from the weight of your own struggles. Acts of kindness, even small ones, remind you that life is bigger than your pain, and they fill your spirit with meaning. Helping someone else. Smile can sometimes be the very thing that allows you to find your own smile again. Ultimately, happiness during hard times is not about pretending that everything is fine. It is about facing life honestly, practicing acceptance, building gratitude, and sharing light even while walking through darkness. This form of happiness cannot be shaken by external events because it is rooted deep within. When you push yourself to practice this mindset daily, you discover that happiness is not something fragile, but something unbreakable, something carried inside you no matter what storms arrive. In the end, the message is simple but powerful. Life will not always be kind, challenges will not always disappear, and happiness will not always come naturally. But you have within you the ability to choose, again and again, how you respond to what life presents. You can choose to resist, complain, and drown in sorrow. Or you can choose to accept, to stand tall, and to cultivate joy even in the presence of hardship. Happiness is not a gift waiting at the end of suffering. It is a seed you water every day, especially when the soil feels dry and unyielding. Each act of gratitude, each breath of acceptance, and each moment of kindness is a reminder that you are not powerless. So push yourself, not in a way that denies your pain, but in a way that empowers your spirit. Push yourself to rise each morning with the courage to smile. Push yourself to notice what is still beautiful around you. Push yourself to shine your light for others who may be trapped in their own darkness. In doing so, you will discover that happiness is not something to chase, it is something to embody, even in difficult times. And the more you practice it, the more unshakable it becomes. Let this be the reminder you carry. Happiness is not outside of you, and it is not waiting for the future. It is here, it is now, and it is a choice only you can make. Even when life is hard, especially when life is hard, choose happiness. Because when you do, nothing in this world has the power to take it away from you.